I want to talk about any particular learnings or moments that really stick out in your mind from building Stasher.
Ooh, in general or COVID specific or
in general?
General. Okay. I do have one. And this is candid. I'm really going for the candid theme here.
Go for it. That's what we want. It's the best.
Yeah, we early on had a third co-founder, and ultimately didn't work out. They kind of weren't aligned. But because we kind of started it as a side project, a bunch of us who'd like studied together, we didn't start out with founder agreements and stuff. So that made that whole process very difficult. Yeah.
So what did that mean? Was that basically hearsay, one person saying one thing, one person saying another, talking about agreements that were never actually penned out?
Yeah, roughly. And then ultimately, like raising money helped because it meant that like at some point investors were like, no, you guys have to have vesting agreements. So that like, but it meant that we couldn't do anything before that point. And it was a difficult situation, but my takeaway from it, and it's a life learning that applies both to like business in general, but also personal stuff, is that I've kind of realized that it's really important to, as much as possible, interact with high integrity people. Which, sorry, that sounds like a slight on the person. Like they're a nice person. It didn't work out, but the nature of a lot of the disagreement was kind of around like, yeah, but you know, legally this is the stuff, and the kind of realization that like, as much as possible, try and spend time with, try and work with people who, you know, even if they found a loophole, which meant that they owed you nothing, would be the kind of person who would say that obviously that doesn't matter. Obviously, it's not the intention of the agreement that we have.
Yeah.
So try and surround yourself with high integrity people, particularly with co-founders. Have a co-founders agreement. Understand. I think a lot of people also think of, or particularly founders, think of like vesting as kind of like an us versus investors problem, and they don't realize that vesting is also a protection for co-founders amongst yourselves. Because you know, even if you have great relationships and have no doubt that you know you guys will get on amicably, at the end of the day, like it's going to take probably a minimum of 5 years to build any meaningful business, right? With your co-founders, if you have co-founders, and you know, people's lives change over 5 years. Like
exactly
things, I mean, like things totally out of their control could change. They could decide, like, you know what, I need to move on and travel or start another business or something, right? And ultimately, that agreement also helps protect you from each other in that circumstance. It helps stop some run away with everything.
So really good learnings. I like the point on high integrity. From a hiring perspective, do you think you can interview for that and sense somebody's integrity in, you know, 1 or 2 hours worth of interviews?
I'll be honest, we like just before COVID, we were about 20 people. And now between Tree Points and Stasher, it's like 15 to 20 people. So we've never really had to scale our HR processes beyond, you know, like a couple technical tests, particularly if they're a developer or something, or, you know, job relevant, like ability test, and more of just kind of sensing, you know, talking to a person and feeling a vibe. I know that's not scalable. And I know that you should have specific, like one thing I was recommended was, for example, if you have 2 or 3 people interviewing, have each person have like one quality in mind that they're kind of probing for. Right. So maybe you could have integrity as one of them.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you could construct some questions around like past experiences or what would you do in this situation to try and feel it. But ultimately, like, no, I don't think that you can get a vibe, but you can't really test for that in an hour or 2, right?
Yeah. I wonder on that because I've interviewed some people who were so brilliant, but then when it came to the actual role, it was, you know, less so. And from an integrity standpoint, it wasn't what I had expected.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult. It's like you have such
impossible.
a short amount of time. And, you know, there's that popular phrase of hire slow, fire fast.
Yep.
But it's like, how slowly can you actually hire a specific person? Because if somebody's on the market for a job and they want to move from where they currently are, they're not really interested in going around 6 hours worth of interviews or weeks and weeks worth of interviews whilst they've got loads of other job offers on the table.
To be fair, specific to that phrase, hire slow, fire fast, I think the hire slow part doesn't necessarily mean the pros, like be meticulous about your interview process. I think it means be meticulous about your decision to add another person. But I take your point that you should also be careful with the people you interview.
I would love to hire slow on the specifics of that process though.
Yeah.
I think that would make such a difference. If you could meet somebody casually, if you could go for a walk, if you could have all the formal tasks, introduce them to the team, but so it doesn't actually feel like an interview on those specific times.
I get you.
I think that would, you know, transform the ability to hire somebody with the right type of values for the business, but it just doesn't exist really.
I think to be fair, probation periods exist, but I do feel like there's this weird sense that like if you were aggressive about probation periods, and to be fair, there are companies that do, like Netflix famously is aggressive about them. It's, you know, it can work, but it's tougher when you're a smaller team. Like, you know, we try to instill cultural values where it's like, hey, like, you know, we're friends, we get on, but like it's a team, not a family.
Yeah.
And that's a positive thing. I mean, if you've played any team sports or whatever, you know that like there's a camaraderie, but there's also an expectation of performance. And you know, sometimes that means people get bad news and stuff. But in reality, it's so hard to like. It's hard to introduce to everyone, hey, here's a member of the team, and then they disappear. Like you want to like if you hire someone, you don't really want to let them go in probation unless it's going really badly.
Yeah, because the psychological safety part of that is awful.
Yep.
Especially if you're a small and growing team.
Yeah. And I mean, how are people supposed to react next time you bring someone in? And also, it kind of makes it look like I don't know how to hire well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's tough on hiring is difficult.